We've touched on kind of what's possible for banks. And so now I think actually is a really good point to kind of look at what we're going to do for the next 24 months. And it's, again, one of our key questions is kind of what's our strategy for the next 24 months? What's the Cardano Foundation going to do? Can you give us that in a few lines?
Yeah, in a few lines. Amazing. So essentially, we're going to form different divisions and departments who is aligned with the strategy presentation we already published several months ago. And the first one is we are going to form a department which we really call Regulated Financial Institutions and Exchanges. As you know, we're already supporting quite a few regulated entities around the world in terms of technical support. And we have a large demand of more support. But this department is really focusing on, as I said before, ensuring that we can have access to the decentralized blockchain wherever you are in the world, in the, let's say, regulatory environment you act and live in today. There's also a part of a compliance procedure in there and so forth. The other part is when we think about when you look at the Cardano blockchain, it is enterprise grade. It's the most solid blockchain you find out there. But if you are in the world of today and you want to connect to this world, you're actually lacking some infrastructure. So we're going to form a technology team who's going to build a new version of Ledger Sync, or what we love to call in our community DB Sync, because we've seen that one of the largest requests we have from exchanges and banks and enterprises is that the database sync functionality can be out of sync for a very long time. And we've seen that we can decrease that quite a lot. So we're going to do several products around that to ensure that as a business, you have the ability to parcel the blockchain in different ways to get value out of that. That will then also allow us to do a Cardano Explorer. Also, again, open source. So everything we do here will be open source. It will be reference implications. It will be on our developer portal, but it will also be on GitHub, which will allow everybody to take inspiration of this, right, and do their own business models. But the reason we want to do a Cardano Explorer is because we have some actors in the world, or some stakeholders, or some community which we are not servicing today. And those are very much regulators, it's accountants, it's auditors, is a little bit the boring world. And what they need is they need a Cardano Explorer which accurately shows them the cash flow patterns, where is things moving and from which entities they're moving. Plus that we have enterprises, pharma life science companies and so on, who's actively looking at implementing on Cardano. And they're asking different questions than you would do if you're looking for a P2P transaction of ADA. They're asking, when we're doing metadata or when we are adding a smart contract through the Plutus application backend or whatever that is, when we're adding that to the blockchain, how can we ensure that we see the data and we see the root of trust and we see where these added value actually comes in if you want to do, for instance, insulin vials on the blockchain, that you can track that in a way who actually incorporates into your backend. So obviously there's going to be APIs out of both of those. Further to that, we're going to build some automated, we call it community tools. So it's not so much community in terms of one individual person, but it's more about, we have about 150, 60 exchanges and banks we support technically today on the Cardano blockchain. And we need to have an ability to scale that. So us having an understanding if an exchange is down or a bank is down, that it gives us a flag in the system that we can proactively reach out to them and say, actually, you are probably down because of X, Y, and Z. Or we can say, we're coming a new hard fork combinator event. You need to upgrade your infrastructure. Otherwise, some of the businesses or some of the clients who rely on your infrastructure will not be able to get the services they expect. And we want to get to a place where this is more self-service. So this is just one example, right? But the ability to build, products which allows enterprises, exchanges, banks, and so forth to get a better service from the Cardano community as a whole is essential in terms of getting adoption. When you're building products, however, you also need some Q&A, and you need some cybersecurity, and you need some infrastructure. And while we have not built those products yet, we will still establish a Q&A team who also will then start looking at some of the stuff the community, you dear community is building, but also some of the stuff other people are building, and trying to look at how do they play together. So when you take a module and you put that together with a wallet, and you put that together with an oracle to understand, the Q&A release mechanisms and the quality, and how those, basically the testing of how those things plays together. And then we obviously, as soon as we start having our own products, we will then also do that on ours. So we know that the reference code on these things will be up to the expectations which you do expect from a Cardano entity to deliver. Further to this, we're also going to have some product owners who's going to look into the feedback of this new, let's say, these new builders on the Cardano blockchain. So what I'm essentially speaking about is a digital identity. I'm speaking about metadata and supply chain, and a couple of other, let's say, more verticals, where we're looking into places where we've proven through, for instance, our partnerships today and the reference applications we have today, that this already works. How do we scale that, but also how do we add to that? So one of the key things with digital identity is not just having a great digital identity on the Cardano blockchain like a Tala Prism, but also having the ability to port that into other identity solutions. So you can identify with solution A on Cardano blockchain, but another system accepts that, right? So really going into those verticals and ensuring that people have what they need to build, but also that we attract those infrastructure components to the Cardano ecosystem is some of the places we are very much looking forward in building in what we call the center of excellence.
So that is definitely more than a few lines, but that's okay, because I think it's really, really important to go into all of those details. I think another part of our roadmap and what's ahead is around the ambassador program. So maybe you could just give us maybe more than a few lines on this one, on what the update with the ambassador program is, or kind of where we stand and kind of what's happening.
Sure. So I think that the ambassador program is one of the most strategic, important tools we have in the toolbox in order for the Cardano community to flourish. And we see so much energy, and we see also an increasing maturity in that. So much that they're even forming their own entities, like sub-entities under the ambassador program. They are representing also the Cardano Foundation in certain work groups, because they're, they have a lot of knowledge and they have a lot of experience, and they understand what we do, and we cried out also a bit for help, because the ecosystem is probably the largest or second largest ecosystem in blockchain at all. So a lot of things are happening. But I think also what we need to do is, like we just did the other week, where we had the honor of having Ken Kodama-san from Imurgo, one of the original founders of Cardano, but also the CEO of Imurgo, joining the ambassador call and doing like a Q&A there. The ability for us to ensure that whoever is building on the Cardano blockchain, so right now it's the 3 companies plus 15, 16 other companies, right? That we have, some way of a curated entryway, that they have the ability to also interact with the ambassadors, and the ambassadors can ask questions and they can get insight in order for them to represent in their community groups and in their verticals out there. We are still on an explorative path. I think there's a lot to be done still. I still think that when we look back into what happened in blockchain, we have, let's call it bounty hunting, which is very famous in blockchain, the ability to crowdsource work, right? The gig economy. And there we've probably not been as good as we could be, but we need to open much more up for that everybody has the ability to translate blocks and so on. And we still have the ability through curation, for instance, through ambassadors and moderators, that they can curate some of that. And on the other hand, the evangelism. So really, the people who truly believe that Cardano can be a part of really changing the systems of the world, which it can be, who's willing to go through, war and blood and walls to go into the right stakeholders and represent the Cardano community, not just the foundation, but the community in these closed circles, and really talk about that from their perspective and their experience. And I think, we can go even further there. And I think, what we are seeing is just the start, but it's an iterative journey, which we're also looking very much forward to doing with the ambassadors together.
And can you give a little bit of an update on what you discussed on the call, actually, if possible?
Sure. So it was a call. This was the specific Imurgo call, And Ken Kodama-san and Murasaki-san, they basically explained the roadmap of Imurgo. They also answered questions around Yoroi. They answered questions around the investment strategy. So these launch pads, as I spoke about earlier, they were talking a lot about who will they invest in and why will they invest and what are they going to do around education and how is the hybrid education program actually looking and how that ties into this launch pads that they basically are aiming at, getting, several thousand developers in. And obviously, how we work in a decentralized ecosystem is that we are not tied together contractually and so forth. So I think a part of the role of the foundation is also to seek out and ensure that we get this alignment and we get this knowledge, we get collaboration, we get community, we get alignment between entities. And I think it was a great call and was there were so many questions and I think that was very positive.
Yeah, there was a lot of questions. It was really, really engaging. I was on it myself.